Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Toph, Yu and Azula. Part 3. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Will and Zuko faced each other in a makeshift arena, with Iroh nearby observing, while Naruto and the others were watching from leaning against Appa. "You're too stiff, sunshine." Toph yelled at Zuko, using the new nickname she decided on for Zuko. "Oh, go suck face with Naruto," Zuko yelled in frustration. "At least I'm getting some." Toph yelled back before she kissed Naruto on the cheek while cuddling with him. "So that's what was causing the earthquakes at night," Aang said with wide eyes. "Great. Your earthbending teacher is a floozy, just like Will," Katara said with a sigh at Aang. "Don't knock it till you try it," Sugar Queen Toph said with a laugh. "Okay, let's start this," Zuko said with a firm tone as he took a breath to calm himself. "Remember nephew, firebending is more than destruction," Iroh said. "Yes uncle," Zuko said with a nod. Zuko then struck at Will, who bent it so that it would part and avoid her. I think you're actually getting better," Will said with a smirk as they started to trade blows while dodging each other's attacks. "It helps that I actually have a sparring partner that doesn't play mind games," Zuko said with a nod as he had to admit that Will was a much better sparring partner than Azula. Will scowled at this. "Your sister may be hot, but she's a fish," she said, as she and Zuko had talked on occasion, and his childhood with Azula had come up during their talks. "Language?" Katara yelled, with a disapproving look on her face. "She's not lying, sis. If anything, Azula makes me appreciate you a little bit more," Sokka said, as he sharpened his boomerang. Katara gave Sokka a scowl at this. "That's a compliment, sis," Sokka said, as he looked at his boomerang along with Kurama. "It is?" Naruto asked curiously, wondering what Sokka's thought process was. "Oh sure, I would be lost without her," Sokka said absent-mindedly as he continued to sharpen his weapons. Katara smiled lightly at this, glad her brother did appreciate her. Even if she got on his nerves. "And pinned." Will yelled triumphantly as she tripped Zuko and put him into a hold on the ground. But before she could grab his head to pin him, he shot fire out of his feet and spun out of her hold. "Ooh oh, he actually got away from you, babe," Naruto said with a smile as he was impressed that Zuko was starting to get creative. "He won't do that again," Will said with a determined smirk as she punched her palm. "Don't let it get to you, Will. Zuko's been sparring with you for weeks, of course he's gonna get wise to your tactics," Yu said with a smile from her seat in front of a pot where she was making breakfast. "Then I guess I'll just have to use new tactics," Will said with a grin. Now, I think that's enough for now. I believe Miss Yu has finished preparing the food," Iroh said as he approached the two firebenders with his hands out peacefully. Zuko looked at his uncle with a sigh. "You're just hungry and want us to stop so you can eat," he said with a flat tone. "Indeed. Now, let's go eat," Iroh said with a smile and a nod as he had no problem admitting this. "Yay, but this is a tie. You didn't beat me, Zuzu," Will said with a smile as she followed Zuko and Iroh over to the others. Zuko paused at this before he sighed and shook his head at the fact that Will used Azula's nickname for him. But he didn't feel any ill intent from Will when she used it, so he let it go. "So what's the plan?" Naruto asked as he helped Yu pass out the bowls. "We need to figure out a weakness for the Fire Nation," Sokka said. "What do you mean?" Will asked as she took her food from Yu. "We may have Iroh and Zuko on the team, but we need some kind of plan for what to do when we decide to go after the Fire Lord," Naruto said, getting what Sokka was talking about. Well, I agree, I'm afraid I don't have any information that could help with something like this," Iroh said with a frown. I'm sure we can find something if we keep our ears open," Sokka said. "Well, for now, I was thinking we could head for the Misty Palms Oasis. I used to go there a lot 100 years ago," Aang said with a smile. "We don't need it either," Sokka said with a groan. "Oh, relax, Noozes. Twinkle Toes has been working hard with both me and the Sugar Queen for the past 3 weeks. I say let him have a small break," Toph said with a smile, waving her hand dismissively. "You're just saying that because you're tired from fooling around with Ao," Sokka yelled as he tripped on some earth that stood up to trip him. Toph said nothing at this but smiled as Naruto patted her on the head. "I agree with Aang. A small break never hurt anyone," Iroh said as he finished his food. Naruto gave a nod of agreement. "Okay. Let's finish up eating and pack up, then we can get going. I bet Appa misses the sky," he said with a smile at the bison, who groaned at him as though in agreement. "I can't wait to show you guys the oasis. It's one of most beautiful places in the world," Aang said with a smile. Later that day. The group stood in front of a makeshift town in the desert, which had a few huts and a small piece of ice in the middle of the makeshift town. "Wow, this place is a hole," Will said with an unimpressed look as they looked around. Heh, it must have changed owners the past 100 years, Aang said with a sheepish smile. Well, we're here now. We may as well take a look round. Maybe we can find some kind of info so you can stop twitching, Naruto said to Sokka as he led the way to what he assumed was a bar. A few guys in robes who were standing next to the entrance watched him approach and one of them spat at Sokka's feet. As they ignored the men and entered the bar, one approached Will. Hey cutie, is that hair real? He asked with a leer. Yup, Will said as she gave him a fake smile. Should we stop this? Zuko asked Naruto. Nah, Will has this, Naruto said with a chuckle as he knew what was coming. How about you ditch the kids and hang out with a real man? The man asked with a smile. Oh? And where exactly is this real man? Cause I only see a creep, Will said. Plus, she's taken by this guy, Sokka said, jerking his thumb at Naruto. The man sneered at Naruto, who approached him with a firm look. Sorry, she's taken, pal. So I would walk away, Naruto said, placing his arm around Will's waist. The man scoffed at this before he looked at the rest of the group. What about the Water Tribe girl with white hair or the blind one with the big face? He asked with a perverse look on his face. POW. The man was sent flying into his fellow men in robes, with blood gushing from his nose. Naruto glared at the group of men as he held out his fist which had some blood on it. Anyone else? He asked with a growl at the other men. The other men said nothing, but they dragged the knocked out man away from them. I think you knocked a few of his teeth loose with that punch, babe, Will said with a smile, kissing him on the cheek. You didn't need to do that, you said with a shake of her head as she also kissed his cheek. A gentleman will always protect a lady's honor, Naruto said with a smile, kissing you on the forehead. Spirits, that was hot. You and I are gonna play later, Mr. Toph said with a grin at Naruto. Naruto rolled his eyes as he walked past Toph and smacked her face hard as he walked past her, making her moan slightly before she smirked at Naruto. Oh, can I join in? Will asked Toph with a large smile. Yay. Me, you and Sweetness can throw a party, Toph said as she jerked her thumb at you, who blushed a little at how blunt Toph was being. Sounds like a plan to me, Will said with a wide grin. Naruto gave a chuckle at this while shaking his head as he gave you a one-armed hug. Don't worry, I'll be gentle with you, he said to her as he kissed her forehead. Yu's blush deepened as she buried her face into his chest. Okay, let's get inside. I'm thirsty, Will said as she led the way. Trust me, we all know how. Sokka yelled as Will slapped him in the back of the head. As they all walked inside the bar, they spotted at the bar a man making some kind of fruit drink with some hatchets and using ice as a bowl. Huh, looks like a low-tech smoothie, Naruto said as they approached the bar. After Aang got one, he walked away and bumped into a man in a robed outfit and a straw hat. Oh, I'm sorry, the man said with a frown. It's okay, Aang said with a smile as he used airbending to clean himself. This caused the man to let out a gasp. A living relic, he said with a smile. Thanks, I try, Aang said with a smile. He's calling you old, Will said flatly as she drank her fruit drink as she sat at a table with Toph and you. Well, he is over 100 years old, Zuko said with a shrug. I can't believe my luck at meeting an actual air nomad, the man said as he started to inspect Aang. Which air temple do you come from? He asked Aang. The southern air temple, Aang said simply. Fascinating. What was the main source of food there? The man asked as he wrote in a notepad. Fruit pies. Aang said, starting to get confused. Outstanding, the man said, writing some more. Who exactly are you? Naruto asked the man. Oh. Forgive me. I am Professor Zay, head of the anthropology department at Ba Sing Se University, he said, with a slight bow at the group. You're a long way from home, aren't you? Will asked as she knew it was a long way from the Earth Kingdom capital. Indeed I am, miss. Fascinating. Is your hair real? Zay said as he finally looked at Will. Yes, it's real, and before you ask, mine is too, Naruto said as he rolled his eyes. Fascinating. What nation has your hair color? Zay asked curiously. Trust me, that's a long story and would take a long time to tell it, Will said. Plus, it's not really that interesting to tell, Naruto said. I'm sure it's a good story. Is that one of Wan Shai Tong's foxes? Zay yelled in surprise as he spotted Kurama sniffing at him as he jumped on a table. Boo. Katara asked curiously while she pet Kurama, who ignored Zay as he took a sketch of him. Yay, we have time. Tell us your story, Iroh said with a smile at the man as he invited him to sit down with him. One explanation later. So you have been going out to the desert to find some old library? Sokka asked curiously as they all looked at a map Zay had laid out over a table. Indeed. I have made many attempts to find Wan Shai Tong's library. But sadly, I have failed every time, Zay said with a sad look on his face. I bet we could find it, Will said with a smile as she figured flying would make it easy. What's so interesting about this library anyway? Naruto asked curiously. It's a vast collection of information from across the 4 nations in one place, Zay said with a wide grin. All the nations? Sokka asked with a smile as he rubbed his chin. Oh geez, Toph said with a groan as she had an idea what Sokka was thinking. Well, it's a good idea, Naruto said with a nod as he saw the uses in finding this library since they did need information on the Fire Nation. So your fox can't lead us there? Zay asked, sounding disappointed. Nah, he's no spirit. He's just a smartass in an animal body that eats too much, Will said with a grin at Kurama. The fox's response to this was to blow a raspberry at Will, sending spit everywhere. Hey. That's it furball, you're dead. Will yelled as she ran after Kurama, who ran out of the bar snickering. So anyway professor, how would you like to ride an actual sky bison? Sokka asked Zay with a smile, along with Ong. You actually have a sky bison? Zay asked with an excited smile. Before anyone could respond, they heard some yelling outside. Hey. You Tucker's looking to kidnap my furry buddy, Will was heard yelling. Before they heard yells of pain and blows landing. Oh god, it hurts. Our fox pet is biting my arm. Oh, for crying out loud, Naruto said with a sigh as they all went outside to deal with this. Once outside, they saw several men in robes running away while still smoking from Will's flame attacks. That's right, you better run, you sand bastards. Will yelled, shaking her fist at them as she stood next to Appa. Kurama was on top of Appa yipping at this while Momo chattered at him. Zay sighed at this. Those sandbenders are always doing things like this, he said. Naruto and Kurama paused at this. Please tell me they don't have a tanuki, Naruto said with a slightly worried tone. The what? Zay asked curiously. Oh thank god, Naruto said as he and Kurama sighed in relief. Okay, let's get going. We have a library to find, Sokka said with a smile as they all approached Appa. Later. Everyone sat on Appa as he flew over the desert. While Zay sat near Ong and talked to Appa, the others were sitting on the saddle, trying to keep the heat off themselves. So how are we gonna find this thing? Toph asked with a sigh as she hung her head off the side of the saddle. No idea, it's nothing but desert for miles, Naruto said as he used airbending to keep everyone cool. Well, if we keep an eye out and stay alert, we should find it eventually, Iroh said. There it is. Toph yelled, pointing off into the distance. Everyone but Naruto and Will looked where Toph was pointing. Only to see nothing. That's what it will sound like when one of you spots it, Toph said flatly, before she waved her hand in front of her face to emphasize she's blind, while smiling widely. Will laughed at this along with Kurama, while Naruto chuckled as everyone else gave her a sour look. Hours later. Okay, I'm starting to lose it. I want off Appa within the next 2 minutes, or I'm gonna mutiny, Will yelled as she waved her arms in the air as she laid on her back. Babe, it's only been an hour, Naruto said. That's only an hour, Will yelled. Are we there yet? Zuko asked with a flat tone. Sokka ignored this as he looked through a telescope and soon. I spotted something. Sokka yelled out. Everyone looked and saw what looked like a lone tower sticking out of the sand. Sokka, that isn't a library, Katara said. Well, let's at least take a look, Ong said as he pulled the reins and led Appa to land. Good, cause I'm about to become unpleasant to travel with. Will yelled as the cabin fever and boredom was getting to her. This is you pleasant? Zuko asked with a raised eyebrow. Sokka snorted at this and laughed while Zuko smirked. On the ground. See? It's just a tower, Sokka, Katara said as they all stood in front of the tower. Hold on, Katara, let Toph take a look with her senses, Naruto said as he looked at Toph. What's my incentive? Toph asked Naruto with a slight smirk. Naruto chuckled at this as he approached Toph and pulled her close. If you do this. He said before he whispered into her ear. Toph soon smirked at this and nodded. Sold. She said as she walked towards the tower. What did you promise her? You asked Naruto curiously. Let's just say that Will probably isn't the most perverted of you three anymore, Naruto said with a smirk. Will's ears twitched at this. Oi. Are you challenging me? Will bellowed at Toph. Focus, woman, Sokka said with a groan while Will grumbled to herself. Toph placed her hand on the tower and closed her eyes so she could focus. It's a big building that feels like it goes on forever, she said. So it's intact and isn't filled with sand? Sokka asked. Toph nodded at this. Okay, let's get out a rope and climb our way in, Naruto said with a smile. Hello, Master Earthbender here. I can just make you some steps, Toph said. No. It's a sacred building. We can just climb up, Zay said, waving his hands in front of himself. Naruto gave a nod of agreement as he took out a long piece of rope and a kunai. He tied the rope through the hole at the end and spun it a few times before throwing it through one of the small windows in the tower, where it wrapped around one of the sills. Naruto then gave the rope a firm tug to make sure that it was secure before looking at the group. "So, who wants to go first?" he asked with a grin at everyone. "I'll stay here with Appa, since me and books don't really mix," Toph said, sitting down with her back leaning against the tower. "You sure?" Naruto asked with a frown as he handed Aang the rope. "I'm a big girl, Whiskers. Plus, I have fluffy hair," Toph said as she gestured to Appa, who groaned at being acknowledged. Naruto nodded at this and followed the others up the rope and into the window. Kurama sniffed at the tower and his ears twitched slightly before he jumped onto Will's shoulder to go with him. Okay, you can come with me. Just hold still," Will said to Kurama as she climbed up. Inside. The group lowered themselves down into the building, which seemed to be pretty deep. "Wow, look at the carvings of this place. And look at those buttresses," Zay said with wide eyes. "Oh, will you morons grow up?" Will said with a shake of her head at Sokka and Aang, who were giggling. "I'm hearing this from the girl in the group who changed her name," Sokka asked with a raised eyebrow. Will growled at this, but before she could do anything, Kurama jumped down to the bridge below and ran off. "Hey! Where are you going in such a hurry?" Will yelled out. "Let's get down there before Kurama gets hurt," Yu said with a frown. "Or he pisses off the spirit that lives here," Naruto said, as he knew even if Kurama couldn't talk, he still had a shit attitude. They soon lowered themselves down and looked around and saw that it was what seemed like endless halls of bookshelves, filled with books and scrolls. "Wow. When you said the ultimate library, you weren't kidding," Katara said as she looked around. They then heard a noise and heard something big approaching them. "Hide," Naruto said as he jumped up and hung from the roof along with Will, who ran up the wall to join him and observing whatever came, while the other hid behind a bookshelf. Soon, what looked like a giant owl walked into the light and looked at the rope they left hanging, while turning his head and stopped as he looked at the bookshelf where the others were hiding. "You can come out from hiding. I smelled you humans when you first entered my library," the owl said. Zay then walked out to greet the owl. "Are you Wan Shai Tong?" he asked. "Indeed. I am he who knows 10,000 things," Wan Shai Tong said as he held out his wings as the others came out of hiding. "Someone likes to hear their own voice," Will said with a snicker. This caused the owl spirit to look up at Will and Naruto, who looked at them for a moment in silent surprise. "Are you both earthbenders?" he asked curiously. Naruto and Will dropped down to the floor at this. "No. Why do you ask?" Naruto asked him. "All my time in the human world and only earthbenders have been able to stick to walls, and that's just for a moment, not like you and the Redeed. Do tell me, how are you able to do this?" Wan Shai Tong asked as he approached Naruto to get a good look at him. Talent?" Naruto asked, not knowing if he should tell the spirit about chakra. Wan Shai Tong looked at Naruto with no reaction at this. "If you're gonna lie to a 10,000-year-old spirit, I would appreciate you actually try," he said with a flat tone. "Please, great spirit, we just want to take a look at your great collection," Yu said, bowing before him. Humans are usually not allowed in my library," Wan Shai Tong said as he looked at the group. "Why's that?" Iroh asked as he stroked his beard. "You humans only seek knowledge for war and to destroy each other. Like that Fire Nation general from a few years ago, he came seeking knowledge on his enemies just like the rest of you humans," Wan Shai Tong said with a scowl. Iroh and Zuko frowned at this. Sokka stepped forward to say something, but Yu grabbed him and pulled him back with a water whip before Katara covered his mouth. "Look, we're not like that. We just want to take a look at the library," Naruto said with a calm tone. "Oh really? You think you can promise me that you won't abuse the knowledge I hold?" Wan Shai Tong said, looking down at Naruto. "I can vouch for us all. I'm the Avatar, and I promise that we won't abuse the knowledge your library holds," Aang said with a bow. Wan Shai Tong looked down at Aang for a moment and after a few moments he nodded. "Very well, I'll let you pursue my library. On the condition that your whiskered friend tells me his secret about how he and his Redeed friend can stick to walls," he said. Naruto sighed at this. "Fine, I suppose that's fair. If you can promise that this won't be abused," he said. "Of course. I value knowledge, I'm not a warmongering human," Wan Shai Tong said. "Wow, how tolerant of you, Ao." Will groaned as Zuko slapped her on the back of the head. "Very well. If you can provide me with some paper and writing tools, I can write out how the technique works," Naruto said with a nod at the owl spirit. Wan Shai Tong nodded back at this. "Very well, enjoy the library. I'll have one of Foxes bring you some paper and ink," he said before he flew off. "Are you sure you're okay with giving him that knowledge?" Aang asked Naruto with a frown. "It's fine, Aang," Naruto said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Okay everyone, let's split up and look around. We will make here our meet-up place," Sokka said before he walked off to look around. Everyone nodded at this as they split up to look around. "With Kurama." Kurama was sniffing around as he walked down some hallways, and soon he turned a corner and came face to face with another fox. Kurama jumped back at this in surprise before he looked at the fox who was sniffing at him curiously. Kurama rolled his eyes at this, as he could tell this was just an animal, not something with human intelligence like him. That's what he thought before the fox yipped at him curiously. Kurama yipped back at the fox and told it his story about how he used to be bigger and used to be able to talk. The fox perked up at this and ran away from Kurama before it looked back and yipped at him, showing it wanted Kurama to follow. Kurama raised an eyebrow at this and followed the fox. They soon came up to an old door which seemed to be covered in dust. Kurama looked at the door curiously, not understanding why he was led here. "Ah, you must be a new recruit," Wan Shai Tong said from behind Kurama, making him jump as he turned around. Kurama looked at Wan Shai Tong with an annoyed look. "Be thankful I stopped you from touching that door. It's a way to the spirit world that can only be opened by a spirit like me. If a being from this world like you touches it, you will feel a lot of pain," the owl spirit said. Kurama raised an eyebrow at this curiously. Wan Shai Tong's ears twitched at this before he sighed. "It seems those humans are looking for something. Let's see," what he said before he flew off. Kurama growled at this, as he could tell this owl had a bad attitude. The fox who led him here yipped at Kurama and pointed at the door behind Kurama. Kurama looked at the door and thought about this, wondering if he counted as a spirit. Kurama sighed at this before he raised a paw and touched the door. The door then surged with spirit energy and engulfed Kurama. "Ahahahahaha." A voice cackled as a big shadow grew over the area, and the fox that led Kurama here was joined by some others who were wagging their tails. But the others, a couple of minutes earlier. Everyone was in the library, looking over some random books or scrolls. Naruto had just finished writing up some basic chakra information before he handed the finished scroll to a fox and went to go look for something to read. He soon spotted Sokka nearby, grabbing random scrolls and putting them in his bag. "Find anything good?" Naruto asked as he walked over. "A few things, but nothing on the Fire Nation." "How hard is it to find something on that place?" Sokka yelled out in frustration. Naruto sighed at this before he spotted a fox nearby yipping at them before it pointed with its nose down a hallway. "I think he wants to help you, Sokka," Naruto said with a chuckle at the fox. Sokka and Naruto followed the fox down some halls, getting the attention of the others who also followed. They soon came up to a new wing of the library with a Fire Nation symbol above the doorway inside. Only it was covered in burn marks and ashes. Shidwill said with a scowl as she and the others looked around. Iroh frowned at the destroyed wing of the library while Zuko looked around for anything that may have survived. He soon found a display nearby with a piece of paper with just a sentence on the only unburned part of it. "The darkest day in Fire Nation history," he read, getting everyone's attention. "Sounds juicy. What is it?" Will asked with a smile. Iroh looked at the date on the burned paper and his eyes widened. "Ah, that day," he said with a nod. "What is it?" Yu asked curiously. "It was a day when a solar eclipse happened and the Fire Nation lost their firebending," Iroh said as he remembered reading about it. "Kind of like when all waterbenders lose waterbending during a lunar eclipse," Katara said. Iroh nodded at this before Sokka snatched the paper from the display. "If we can figure out when the next one is, we can plan an attack for when it happens," he said with a wide grin. They then heard a yip nearby and they saw the fox who led them here, pointing with its nose again before it took off. "I like this one. Maybe we can trade Kurama for this one," Will said as they followed the fox. They soon arrived in a big room that Will instantly recognized. "The planetarium?" she asked in surprise as she looked around. Naruto smiled at this before he looked at the fox who led them here. "Thanks," he said as he leaned down and petted the fox before he pulled out some jerky and gave it to the fox, which it took with gusto before it ran off. "Okay, let's start checking each date before when Sazen's comet is supposed to come," Sokka said as he adjusted the date display. After what felt like a dozen tries, the planetarium went dark. "Yes. There's gonna be a solar eclipse a few months before Sazen's comet comes," Aang said with a smile. "The Fire Lord is in trouble now," Sokka said happily. Before they all felt a presence behind them. "Humans are so predictable," Wan Shai Tong said with an unamused tone as he glared at the group. "Crap," Naruto said with a scowl as he had a feeling things were gonna get ugly. "You have abused my library and lied to me, like I knew you would," Wan Shai Tong said with an angry tone. "Please, we need this knowledge to end the war," Katara said with a frown. "You think you're the first to think their war was justified? Hundreds of you humans came here before this current war," Wan Shai Tong said. "We just wanted to protect those we love," Aang said. "And I'm going to protect what I love," Wan Shai Tong said as he held out his wings and began flapping them. The building started to shake at this. "What are you doing?" Yu asked in worry. I'm taking my knowledge back. I am going to bury my library so deep you humans will never find it, again Wan Shai Tong said. We need to get out of here. Ira yelled seriously. As if I'm going to let you leave. I know every style of fighting and you can't surprise me if. Wan Shai Tong was saying before something slammed into him and sent him over the group and slammed into the opposite wall. The group looked at what was now defending them from the owl spirit. Oh yeah, then let's see you predict me, you seed-sucking mother tucker. A fox with 9 tails and fire around its paws and the size of Appa bellowed at the spirit. Naruto and Will's eyes both widened at this, as they had an idea who this was. Kurama? Naruto asked in surprise, making everyone else pause in surprise. That's the little fox who's been traveling with us. Zuko asked in shock. That's me Zuzu. The 9-tailed fox is back. Gahahahaha. Kurama cackled madly. Show off later, you moron. We need to get out of here. Will yelled out. Right. Everyone on the fox spirit. Sokka yelled to the group. Hey. I'm not a beast of burden. Kurama yelled out. Naruto grabbed Kurama by his face while the others got on his back. Get us out of here now. He yelled. Yeah, or no meat for you. Will yelled from his back. Kurama growled at this before he looked at the getting up owl spirit. What a disgrace. A spirit that is a pet of a human, Wan Shai Tong said, shaking his head as he transformed, with his neck growing longer and his face looking more menacing. Kurama's fur went up at this as his eyes slitted. Oh, you are so dead birdbrain, Will said with a wince. I will not lose to a pet. Brewer. Kurama bellowed as he opened his mouth and blew a stream of fire at the owl spirit, engulfing him in fire which caused him to screech in pain. Everyone's eyes widened at this as they were surprised Kurama was so vicious. Kurama then laughed at this. And this pet kicked your ass. He laughed before he took off running out of the planetarium. Looks like you're back to being a pain in the ass, hothead, Naruto groaned as Kurama ran. Damn straight. Kurama yelled as he stopped at the rope that they used to climb down. Everyone soon started to climb up the rope. When everyone was climbing up, Naruto jumped onto it before he noticed something and looked down, seeing Zay sitting with some books and scrolls all around him. Professor, we need to go. Katara yelled down. I can't. I spent life looking for this tome of knowledge. I could spend a lifetime in here, he said with a sigh. Kurama then shrunk down to his small form and jumped onto Naruto's head. Leave him, you idiots. Now move, move, move. He bellowed at the group. Everyone started to climb, but soon the rope broke. Oh, for tuck's sake. Hold on. Kurama yelled as he was engulfed in a burst of fire that also engulfed the group and shot at the entrance to the library. Outside with Toph. Toph was holding up the library while groaning as she was sweating, as she was slowly losing ground. When suddenly, the tower she was holding up exploded in a burst of fire, sending her flying backwards. The group was also sent flying out of the burst of fire, and they all landed in the sand. Ahahaha. Kurama yelled as he was now in his small form and landed face first in the sand with just his tails poking out. Guys, who's that with you? Did you find someone else in the library? Toph asked curiously as she stood up and dusted the sand off. Will groaned as she got up and shook some sand off her. No, you've met this idiot already, she said as everyone else stood up and shook the sand off. Naruto grabbed Kurama's tail and yanked him out of the sand. Hey. I saved you morons from that beak tuck wad. Is this how you thank a hero? Kurama yelled as he hung from Naruto's hand. And I thought that Toph and Will had a mouth, Katara said with a scowl at Kurama's language. Suck a sandpaper, beep. Kurama yelled at her. Wow. Who is this guy? Toph asked as even she was impressed with this guy's language. Meet Kurama, Naruto said with a sigh as he dropped Kurama on the sand. That's Kurama. Wow, the stories didn't do him justice, Toph said with a smile. Have you been talking about me? This before or after she's done sucking your ow? Kurama yelled in pain as Naruto stomped on his tail. Aang looked around at the area and frowned before he looked at Toph. Toph, where's Appa? He asked. Toph frowned at this and closed her eyes before she shook her head sadly. Aang's eyes widened at this before he started to cry. Naruto and Will frowned at this while the others got up and looked at the area, seeing that they were surrounded by nothing but desert. Aang looked out at the endless desert while the rest of the group were looking around in random directions, trying to think of which way to go. How could you let them take Appa? Aang yelled out at Toph. The whole place was sinking and I was trying to keep it up here and those guys showed up. Toph yelled back, not looking in the right direction since she couldn't see. Well, you all could ride on me for a change, Kurama said with a grin. And can you grow big after that big display of power that got us out? Iroh asked with a raised eyebrow. Kurama yelled as he realized he could not grow while hungry. Language? Katara said with a scowl as she put her hands on her hips. Bite me, mom. Kurama yelled mockingly. You should have come and got us. You probably just left Appa to get on was saying before Naruto grabbed his shoulder. Stop. You know that's not true and this was a shit situation Naruto said, trying to calm Aang down. Yeah, we probably should have left one other person with Toph, Will said with a sigh. You say that now Aang yelled as he approached Will, clearly angry. Back off Boldy. I'm not above cracking your egghead open. Will said with a hard look. Okay, enough. Naruto yelled, using airbending to make himself very loud and making the sand go flying. Nice pipe Sokka said with a groan as he held his ears. What? Toph yelled as she now could barely hear anyone thanks to her hearing being more sensitive. I agree. Fighting amongst ourselves is not going to solve our problems, Iroh said with a nod. We need to get out of here and then we can make a plan for finding Appa you said. I'll find Appa on my own. Aang yelled before he took off on his glider. Naruto looked like he was going to follow him before Will placed her hand on his arm. Let him go babe. He can find us when he's done throwing his tantrum Will said with a scoff. Will, Appa is all he has from 100 years ago. So how about some sympathy? You asked as she healed Toph's ears. Thanks Moonhair. Remind me to thank you later Toph said with a grin before she groped Yu's ass playfully, making the waterbender blush. Focus please, we need a plan Zuko said with a flat tone. Okay, we need to stick together and try to find a way out of here, Katara said. If I get some rest and maybe some food, I can grow big again Kurama said. Well, you're out of luck. Whoever took Appa also took our stuff too Sokka said while Momo sat on his head. I have some emergency supplies, but we're gonna still have to be careful. We have no idea how long it will take to get out of here Naruto said as he unsealed some emergency jerky and threw it to Kurama and Sokka. Hey. His piece is bigger than mine. Sokka yelled. I do more work, Sonea. Kurama said as he chewed on his jerky. Okay everyone, time to eat up Naruto said as he passed out some apples to everyone. You have extra water? Katara asked curiously. Me and Naruto have our own canteens, but we will still have to conserve it until we get out of this litter box Will said as she nodded. Katara nodded back at this as they all picked a direction and started to walk. A little later. Can I have some water? Sokka asked as they walked. Sokka, it's been 5 minutes since your last drink, Katara said as she frowned at her brother. Indeed. We can't waste any of our water Iroh said with a nod. Kurama and Sokka both groaned at this as they looked down. Kurama then looked up and spotted a cactus nearby. Hey, maybe we can get some water from that Kurama said, gesturing to the cactus. Good idea Kurama. Sokka yelled with a grin as he and Kurama ran over to the cactus. Oh, this has good idea written all over it, Will said flatly as Sokka used his hatchet to chop off a piece of the cactus. Kurama, I expect this from Sokka. But really? I thought you had some brains Naruto said as he held Toph's hand so she didn't feel alone. Oh, go babysit the blind fat ass and let me drink. Kurama yelled before he dunked his head into his piece of cactus with Momo doing the same next to him while Sokka drank from his. Remind me to kill him later, Toph said with a scowl at Kurama's dig. Don't worry, I like your ass Naruto whispered to Toph, who chuckled at this. And I'll help you hide the body when you kill him, Will said. Hey, this isn't too bad. Are you guys sure you don't want Sokka was saying before he stopped talking and his eyes dilated. Oh joy, here we go Will said with a grin as she knew this was gonna be funny. Sokka then shook his head rapidly. Drink cactus juice. It'll quench ya. It's the quenchiest. Sokka yelled with a wide smile as he held out the cactus to them before he crawled like a worm on the sand. Momo meanwhile was flying in circles before he crashed into the ground. Kurama was lying on his back looking up at the sky. Kurama, you okay? Zuko asked. I am fully evolved. Kurama bellowed out before he ran off into the desert, laughing madly. Before he crashed into a cactus. Ah. It bit me with its ass. Kurama yelled as he rolled on the sand with spikes in his face and fur. Will and Toph were laughing at this while you tried not to laugh. Wow Zuko said as he shook his head at this as he smiled a little as he had to admit this was pretty funny. Do you know what kind of cactus these are Iroh? Naruto asked curiously. All cacti have liquid in them, but it also kinda well Iroh said as they watched Sokka flap his arms and caw like a bird while Kurama was scratching at the sand and meowing like a cat as Momo was chewing on his own tail. Fucks them up? Toph asked with a grin as while she couldn't see what they were doing, she had a feeling it was pretty funny from Will's laughs. Hey Whiskers, teach me to be a magnet for fishes. Sokka yelled as he bowed to Naruto. Okay, I'm at my limit Naruto yelled before he went to smack Sokka. Sokka, follow me. Suki is this way Katara said as she pointed in a direction. Thanks, sis. Follow me to paradise, my minions. Sokka yelled as he ran where Katara pointed. Banana. Kurama yelled as he walked behind Sokka with Momo laid on his back. This is the best day of my life, Will said with a large smile as they all followed the three currently nuts companions of theirs. We are so gonna mess with them later, Toph said with her own grin. I hope so, this is pretty funny, Zuko said with a grin. Oh, it's not that funny, Katara said as she rolled her eyes at this. Hey Naruto. Kurama yelled as he stopped and looked back. What is it, Kurama? Naruto asked, trying not to laugh. Sand. It's everywhere. Kurama yelled before he laughed madly as he laid in the sand and made a sand angel, with Momo doing the same next to him. Katara started to shake as she tried hard not to laugh at this. Later. The sun was now setting and it was now getting dark. Okay everyone, we need to set up camp, Naruto said as he unsealed his seal-enhanced tent. Why? Isn't it better if we walk while it's cold? Katara asked with a beeped eyebrow. Actually Katara, it gets so cold in the desert, it's actually worse for us since we don't have warm enough clothes, Iroh said as he and Zuko helped Naruto set up the tent. Hey guys, why didn't we invite that giant mushroom to join us? It would have been a great help and a good friend, Sokka said as he laid upside down on a dune with Momo next to him trying to swim through the sand. Okay, less funny now, Will said as she picked up a stick to smack Sokka. You think you have it bad? Toph asked as she pointed at the top of her head where Kurama was sitting. Mush, fat ass. Mush. Kurama yelled as he smacked Toph's ass with his tail. Oh, that is it. Toph yelled as she grabbed Kurama and started to choke him. Is he even still high? Will asked Naruto as this seemed like something Kurama would do normally. Naruto, help me. She wants my secrets of being king of the lemurs. I like to move it. Move it. Kurama said as Toph choked him. Toph, when you're done killing Kurama, the tent is set and it's solid in there, Naruto said. Sweet. Toph yelled as she threw Kurama and ran into the tent. I believe I can fly. Kurama sang as he flew with his legs spread out and crashed into Sokka. Are you here to take me to my precious? Sokka asked, looking at Kurama with a tilt of his head. I hope you have a place to stick them in your tent, Zuko said, while Iroh sighed. Okay you two, follow me. I have some meat for you, Naruto said as he took out a piece of meat, hoping to lure the Manikuman and Kitsune into the tent. Meat. Sokka and Kurama yelled as they followed Naruto. Naruto ran into the tent, waving the meat in front of an open door inside the big tent before he threw the meat inside the empty room as Sokka and Kurama jumped after it. Naruto then slammed the door shut and placed a seal on it, which locked the room. There, that should keep them out of trouble for a while, Naruto said with a sigh as everyone else came into the enlarged tent. Finally. I can see. Toph said with a large grin as she sat on the couch nearby, which was made of earth. Hey, look who showed up while you were locking up the Moron duo, Will said as Aang came into the room and was pulled into a hug by Katara. Any luck finding Appa? Katara asked as she pulled away from hugging Aang. Aang said nothing as he shook his head and scowled. Aang, you need to relax and quit being a baby, Will said with a scowl at his attitude. Naruto and you both sighed at this as this was not gonna go well. Well, I can't not care about anything, like you. Aang yelled at Will. Hey. I care, you bald mother, Will was yelling before Naruto grabbed her shoulder, stopping her. Aang, what Will is saying is that lashing out at us is not gonna help. And that obviously once we are out of here, we will help you find Appa, Naruto said calmly to Aang. Aang paused at this before he soon sighed and nodded. Okay, now that we are all calm, let's make something to eat, Katara said as she approached a pot and stove nearby. Great idea. I'll help you, said with a smile as she followed Katara. Naruto nodded at this as he sat next to Toph. Are you doing okay now? He asked her as he gave her a one-armed hug. You don't need to worry about me, Whiskers, Toph said. Sorry, but as your boyfriend, it's my job. Especially in a desert where you can't see as well, Naruto said with a shrug as he grinned. Yup, it's one of the perks, Will said with a smile. Well, I'm not some weakling that needs your help, Toph was saying before Naruto pulled her into his lap and hugged her. Toph, you are anything but weak. But there is no shame in letting us help you, Naruto said as he held her close. Toph smiled at this before she froze as she felt something poking her and smirked. That, and you want sex, don't you, Whiskers? She asked as she wiggled in his lap, rubbing her ass on his crotch. Will snorted and laughed at this as she loved seeing Toph mess with Naruto. Maybe, Naruto said after a moment of silence. Toph chuckled at this. Fair enough, Whiskers. Let's go to your room then, she said as she got up and pulled Naruto onto his feet. Is this really the time for that? Katara asked with a raised eyebrow. When you actually get a sex life, then you can judge me, Sugar Queen, Toph yelled as she dragged Naruto away. Hey. Wait for me, I want in. Will yelled as she followed them. Yu shook her head at this as she chopped some vegetables. You're not gonna join them? Zuko asked with a raised eyebrow. I don't want to ditch helping Katara, Yu said simply. Miss Yu, I can cook a little, so I can help, Iroh was saying, before Yu was already gone, chasing after Naruto, Will and Toph. You can do it. Kurama was heard yelling from inside his cell. Give me the meat. Stop hugging it all for yourself. Sokka was heard yelling. The next day. Naruto, we have a problem. Zuko yelled out, waking up Naruto and the girls. Yay, so step away from your fishes. Kurama bellowed, making the tent shake. Naruto and the girls quickly ran out of the tent and saw Aang confronting what looked like a group of sandbenders while the others were there ready to fight if things went bad. What's going on? Naruto asked with a peaked eyebrow. Baldy is going nuts. Kurama yelled before he stuck his head in the sand. Where's my bison? Aang yelled at the group before he swung his staff and sent an air blast at one of their sand boats, destroying it. We didn't take anything. One of the sandbenders, who sounded young, yelled. Toph looked over at where she heard that voice and narrowed her eyes. You said to put a muzzle on him. She yelled as she pointed at him. You muzzled Appa, Aang yelled angrily before his eyes and tattoos started to glow. Everyone, get back. Iroh yelled as he grabbed Zuko and Sokka before running over to Naruto with Kurama right behind him. What did you do? An older man yelled at the younger sandbender. Dad, the young sandbender was saying before Aang approached him and pointed his staff at him in a threatening way. Tell me where Appa is. Aang yelled in a booming voice that seemed to be said by a group and not just Aang. We sold him to a few beetle-headed merchants. I think he said he was gonna sell him, and Ba Sing Se, the young sandbender yelled out in fear. Please forgive my son's foolishness. We will gladly supply you with the items they kept and escort you out of the desert. The older sandbender pleaded. Aang glared at this and raised his staff over his head. But before he could do anything, Naruto was behind him and with a sharp movement, he chopped Aang in the back of the neck, which caused him to fall to the ground knocked out while his tattoos and eyes stopped glowing. Aang. Katara yelled in worry as she ran to Aang to make sure he was okay. He's fine, Katara, just knocked out, Naruto said before he looked at the sandbenders, who looked terrified of what he might do. You all can't stop being punkasses, he's not gonna kill you, Kurama said as he approached while growing to the size of a wolf. So I would be thankful that you're still alive, Will said with a growl at the sandbenders. You said you could get us out of here? Sokka asked curiously. Yes, of course. The older sandbender said with a nod as he led them to one of the free sand boats. You better hand over what you took, asshole, or it's me that's gonna attack you next, Will said with a growl as she summoned a small fireball while Naruto took down their tent and sealed it away. The younger sandbender paled at this before he ran over to the sand boat and pulled out several packs and threw them at Will's feet. My boomerang. You always come back. Sokka yelled as he spotted his boomerang fall out of one of the bags. Yay, Kurama said with sarcasm, lacing his words as he carried on to the sand boat. Okay, let's get the hell out of here, Toph said as they all got on the sand boat and soon took off as they were escorted out of the desert. Once the sandbenders had dropped everyone off at the edge of the desert, the group had started moving towards Ba Sing Se, where the sandbender boy had said the guy who bought Appa said he would take him. Right now, they were all relaxing near a lake while they let Kurama rest after carrying everyone. I miss Fluffy, Kurama groaned out as he laid on his stomach, tired out after carrying everyone. Yay, not so easy to carry us, huh? Toph asked with a chuckle as she laid on the earth and rested. You would know, fat ass, ow. Kurama was saying before Toph stomped her foot and sent Kurama flying into the lake with an earth pillar. Oh, it'll be good to visit Ba Sing Se again. Only this time as a tourist, Iroh said with a grin. We're not tourists. We're going there to see the Earth King about getting support, Sokka said as he looked over a map while Momo sat on his head. Water-bending bombs. Katara and Yu yelled as they jumped off a cliff overlooking the lake. And when they both entered the water exploded, making it rain over everyone. When the water stopped falling, everyone saw Kurama hanging from a nearby tree branch. Nice one, you two. Go ahead and ruin the old spirit library map. Sokka yelled. Tuck your map. I look like a drowned rat. Kurama yelled as he jumped down from the tree branch, his fur wet and an angry look on his face. I can try and dry the map if you want, Zuko said as he made a small flame appear. Well, I dry you off, Naruto said with a smirk as he sent an air blast at Kurama, sending him into Yu, who dried him off. Sorry, Sokka, Katara said as she used her water bending to dry out the map while Zuko gave a pout at this but used his flame to dry everyone else. Sokka went back to his map while everyone looked at the map with him except Toph and Kurama. Well, it looks like the only way to Ba Sing Se is to take this route that the map calls the Serpent's Pass, Sokka said, moving his finger along a path on the map. Well, if it's the only path, it's the only path, Will said as she shrugged at this. Well, it's not like we can just have Apoof. Sokka was saying as Will elbowed him in the side before she gestured to Ong who was nearby. I'm fine guys, really. Let's just get moving, Ong said with a monotone voice as he got up. Before Naruto smacked him in the back of the head. Ow. What did I do? Ong yelled in pain. That nothing matters crap is not any better than being an anger-filled idiot, Will said bluntly as she knew why Naruto had smacked Ong. Yay. Especially as you're the Avatar. Look Ong, just cutting yourself off like this is not gonna help. We said we're gonna help you find Appa and we're gonna do it, Naruto said firmly. Indeed. Having hope is what keeps everyone moving, my young friend Iroh said as he nodded at Naruto's words. Ong grumbled at this as he rubbed the back of his head before Katara hugged him, making him pause and sigh before he hugged her back. Naruto and Will smiled at this and nodded, glad that Ong was past this phase he was in. As everyone got ready to pack up, they noticed a group of people heading towards them. One was an older man, one was an older woman who was pregnant, and the last was a younger woman who looked like she was the man's sister. Greetings travelers. What brings you here? The man asked as he smiled and waved at them. We're looking to head for Ba Sing Se, Ong said as he jumped down and used his airbending to cushion his fall. You're the Avatar? The pregnant woman said with a smile before her and the other two bowed their heads at him. No need for that, Ong said as he smiled kindly. My name is Dan. This is my wife Ying and my sister Yuna, the man said with a smile as he introduced his family. Are you heading to Ba Sing Se as well? Will asked as the others jumped down to greet them. Indeed we are. We're hoping to get there before I have my baby, Ying said as she smiled while rubbing her swollen belly slightly. Well, you can travel with us on the Serpent's Pass if you want, Sokka said, not seeing a problem. The family gasped at this. You're looking to use that treacherous path? Yuna asked with wide eyes. Only the most desperate use that deadly path, Ying said. Treacherous and deadly path. Good choice, Sokka Toph said as she slugged Sokka in the shoulder hard. Well, it's the only path we have, Sokka said as he rubbed his shoulder. There is the ferry, then said with a shrug. Wait, a ferry? Naruto asked curiously. Indeed. There is a secret ferry for refugees to use to get to safety, then said with a nod. Nice ferry or dangerous path? Katara asked as she looked at the others. I vote dangerous path. Kurama yelled, making the family jump in surprise. You just want to fight whatever makes the path dangerous, Naruto said with a deadpan look at him. Hey, I just became an official spirit and have some power back. So let me stretch my legs, damn it. Kurama yelled. So, where is this ferry? Will asked, ignoring Kurama as they all followed the refugee family. Later. The group were led into a hidden cavern, which thanks to some earthbending guards, opened the door where they entered what looked like a refugee camp, while a check-in station stood nearby and several ferries stood in the water behind it. Wow, I didn't expect so many people, Katara said as she looked around at the refugees. Iroh frowned at this. My brother's evil knows no bounds, he said as he folded his arms into the other's sleeves. Keep that crap to yourself, old man, Kurama whispered before he smacked Iroh on the back of his head with his paw before he ran over to Naruto. Well, let's get in line, Naruto said as they all approached the ticket counter. I already told you, no vegetables on the ferry. The woman at the ticket stand yelled at the old man before her as she stamped a piece of paper. A single cabbage slug could destroy the entire ecosystem of Ba Sing Se. Security. She yelled, pointing at the man's cart, making him look over in shock as a platypus bear wearing an Earth Kingdom outfit with a collar and chain destroyed his cart and ate a few cabbages. No. My cabbages. The man yelled out as he sank to his knees before two men picked him up and carried him away, with Naruto and the others watching this. Next. The woman yelled out as she stamped a piece of paper. Ong walked over with a nervous look on his face. 6 tickets for the ferry Ba Sing Se please, he said. Passports, the woman said. Ong looked dumbfounded at this. No one told us that we needed passports, he said. Sokka then walked over. Don't you know who this is? He's the Avatar, he said. Arg. I see about 50 avatars a day. And by the way, not a very good costume either, the woman said as she pointed off to the side where the group saw a few people pretending to be Ong. Ong gave a nod of his head, an impressed look on his face as Momo climbed onto his shoulder. And besides, no animals allowed. Do I need to call security? The woman asked with a glare. Ong and Momo looked over at the platypus bear as it crunched down on a cabbage in its mouth, making Momo cower behind Ong's shoulder. Kurama gave a snicker at this. BP whispered before Naruto slapped him on the back of his head. That won't be necessary, Ong said as he backed up with his hands in the air. Next. The woman yelled out. Toph then grabbed Naruto by his arm and used a small bit of earthbending to move Will and Yu behind her and pulled Kurama to stand next to her. "Follow my lead," she whispered to them before she walked over to the stand, her arm holding onto Naruto's, with Will and Yu standing slightly behind her while Kurama was on her other side. "Don't worry, Twinkle Toes, I'll take care of this," she said as she pushed Aang out of the way before she took a piece of paper out and placed it before the woman. "My name is Toph Bifrong and I'll be needing 6 tickets," she said simply. The woman's eyes widened at this. "Ah, the golden seal of the flying boar. It is my greatest pleasure to help anyone of the Bifrong family," she said as she bowed her head to Toph, spreading her arms out as she did. This got wide eyes from everyone. "Well, glad that Toph's family name is good for something," Naruto whispered to Will, who nodded in agreement. Toph gave a hidden smirk at this before replacing it with a blank look. "It is your pleasure. As you can see, I'm blind and these 3 imbeciles behind me are my valets, well this man next to me is my bodyguard and the ladies slightly behind are my servants," she said. Aang, Sokka and Katara were hugging each other and tried to look as cute and innocent as possible, while Naruto stood straight with a serious look on his face as Will and Yu stood with their arms crossed and heads bowed. The woman looked unsure at this. "But, the animals," she said, looking at Kurama and Momo with a raised eyebrow. "Are my seeing eye lemur and guard fox," she said as Momo flew over and perched himself on Toph's shoulder while Kurama sat in front of her. "Well, normally it's only 1 ticket per passport. But this document is so official, I guess that it's worth 4 tickets," the woman said with a smile as she stamped out the tickets for the group. "Thank you very much. Servants, grab the tickets," Toph said as she and Naruto walked away while Will and Yu grabbed the tickets before following after them, with the others right behind them. "Alright, we sure scammed that lady good," Sokka said with a wide grin before someone grabbed him by the back of his shirt and turned him around. "Tickets and passports please," a female guard said with a scowl. Is there a problem?" Sokka asked nervously. The guard got up close with Sokka and poked his chest. "Yeah, I have a problem with you. I've seen your type before. Probably sarcastic, you think you're hilarious, oh and let me guess, traveling with the Avatar," she said. Sokka narrowed his eyes at this. "Do I know you?" he asked with a beaked eyebrow. The female guard grabbed Sokka by the front of his shirt and glared at him. "You mean that you don't remember? Well, maybe you remember this," she said before she pulled him in for a kiss on the cheek. This made Sokka blush before he shook his head and smiled widely. "Suki," he yelled out happily before they hugged each other. "Sokka, it's so nice to see you again," Suki said with a smile as they separated. Later. Naruto, Will, Aang, Katara, Toph, Yu and Sokka were sitting with Suki up in one of the guard towers while Zuko and Iroh were getting their own tickets thanks to them having fake IDs. "So, this is the Suki you were ranting about while you were high on cactus juice," Will said with a teasing smirk at Sokka. Kurama was sniffing at Suki while she pet Momo and snickered at this. "Hey. You were acting like a moron too," Sokka yelled at the kitsune. "Who are you calling a moron?" Kurama yelled as he jumped at Sokka, but Will caught him and zapped him. "Thought you guys have a spirit with you?" Suki asked in shock as Kurama yelled in pain from Will's zaps. "Yay. But he's not as noble as the stories say," Katara said. "Hey. I'm plenty noble. I'm a spirit fox," Kurama yelled as Will dropped him. "So what makes you noble?" Yu asked with a raised eyebrow. "The cursing?" Katara asked with a curious look. "The bad attitude?" Aang asked with a raised eyebrow. "Oh wait, I know. It's you throwing insults," Toph said with a smirk as she wanted to help tease Kurama. "It's all of the above, peasants," Kurama yelled with a cackle. "Anyway, how have you been, Suki?" Sokka asked her curiously. "I have been great. Me and the other Kaioshin warriors have been traveling around, helping where we can, and we decided to head for Ba Sing Se and see if we can help there. But all we have been doing is helping with guard duty," Suki said with a shrug before she looked at the group with a curious look. "By the way, why are you using the ferry to get to Ba Sing Se? Where's Appa?" she asked. "We lost track of him while in the desert. We're hoping to find him in the city," Katara said as she placed a hand on Aang's shoulder. Suki looked shocked at this. Avatar, everyone looked and saw Ying and her family down below. "Someone stole our tickets and our supplies," then yelled as Ying cried while Yuna tried to comfort her. Aang frowned at this. "Don't worry, I'll talk to the ticket lady," he yelled out before he headed for the stairs. "Oh joy, more talking to the cranky fish," Kurama said with a scowl. "Normally, I would not like you calling someone that. But you're not wrong," Will said with a smirk at Kurama, who snickered. Later. Everyone was waiting with En and his family while Aang was trying to talk to the ticket lady. While they waited, Naruto spotted Zuko and Iroh approaching. "How did getting your tickets go?" he asked. "Very well, actually. We're on the next ship out," Iroh said as he smiled. What about you guys? Zuko asked the group. We're helping Then and his family try to get replacement tickets, Naruto said. And it's not going well, Toph said, as he felt what was happening nearby. Aang then approached them with a frown and told them the ticket lady had told him no. Don't worry, I'll lead you through the Serpent's Pass, he said firmly. Oh goody, Kurama said with a wide grin. Zuko groaned at this as he and Iroh approached. Wait guys, I think you should go ahead of us, Naruto said as he stopped Iroh and Zuko. Why's that? Iroh asked curiously. Well, you guys want to try the normal life thing for now, right? Naruto asked curiously. Iroh nodded at this, while Zuko hesitated but nodded too. Well, then go on ahead, Naruto said as he and the others smiled at them. Yay. Plus, we will meet you there and then we can meet up and make plans, Sokka said as he nodded at this. We should get your new names now though, so we can find you guys, Will said to Zuko. Zuko hesitated at this and scowled. Oh, it must be good, Toph said with a smirk as she felt his hesitation. Zuko crossed his arms and grumbled under his breath. I'm sorry, what was that? Will asked with a grin, placing her hand to her ear while leaning closer to Zuko. I said that my new name is Leer Jr. Zuko grumbled as he glared at Iroh. Hey, you named me Mushy Nephew, Iroh said with a shrug. This got laughs from everyone but Zuko. Well, you stay out of trouble, okay? You said to Zuko and Iroh. Yay, you're still one of us, so don't be reckless, Barky, Toph said as she gave them a thumbs up. Zuko and Iroh nodded at this and waved as they left to get in line for the next ferry. Okay, let's all file out. We have a dangerous path to go to. Thanks again, Aang, Will said with a flat tone as they all headed for the exit. Hey, wait for me. Everyone heard Suki yelling as they turned and saw her running over in her Kaioshin warrior outfit while carrying a bag on her back. I'm coming with you. But what about the other Kaioshin warriors? Katara asked curiously. I'll head back and meet up with them once I've helped you get to Ba Sing Se, Suki said. Sokka smiled at this and nodded as they let Suki come with them. Oh goody, your fangirl is here, Kurama said with a snicker. Hey, I have more fans than you, Fluffy, Sokka said with a smile as he hugged Suki, who smiled and hugged him back. Also, was that a joke about her weapons being fans? Aang asked with a peaked eyebrow. Duh. I thought air nomads could get jokes, Kurama said. I'm regretting not sending you with Zuko, Naruto said with a groan. Not good idea. Hey Scarhead, wait up. Kurama yelled before he jumped off Naruto's shoulder and ran off. Suki raised an eyebrow at this. Wait, why is he running off and why is Prince Zuko with you guys? She asked curiously. Him and his uncle are on our side, while Kurama and Zuko are buddies, Naruto said with a chuckle. Suki raised an eyebrow at this before she shrugged her shoulders and they all left the hidden port. Later. Everyone was standing in front of the entrance to the Serpent's Pass. Oh, that's not a red flag, Will said as she looked at the sign that said abandon all hope on it. Aang paused at this but shook his head as he remembered what Naruto had told him. Okay everyone, stick together and we should be able to do this without a problem, Yu said calmly to everyone as they all started to make their way across the Serpent's Pass. As they made their way across, they spotted a Fire Nation ship. Try not to stand out and keep moving, Naruto said to everyone as they continued to move. Suddenly, a few large boulders of fire were thrown at them. Looks like we stood out. Sokka yelled. Move. Naruto yelled out. As everyone ran, Will stopped and glared at the ship before she took a stance with her pointer fingers out. And with a few motions, she generated some lightning and fired it at the ship, setting off a small explosion and setting it on fire. Little mean, don't you think? Yu asked as Will caught up with everyone. Why? Did you want to crack at them? Besides, they will survive, Will asked with a raised eyebrow. Suddenly, the Fire Nation ship exploded, making everyone jump in surprise. Would you believe that would have happened if I wasn't here? Will asked with a sheepish chuckle as they saw some Fire Nation soldiers in the water. Just move, woman, I'll punish you later, Naruto said as he rolled his eyes as they all ran. Careful, she might enjoy it, Toph said with a snicker. A little later, they made it to a part where the path was submerged in the water for a bit. What do you think? Aang asked Naruto as they both looked at the submerged path. Naruto looked for a little bit and after a little bit he looked at Toph. Can you make a path? He asked her. Toph stepped forward and felt the earth. It would take a bit to make a path since the earth is so deep. But I could do it if given time, she said with a nod. Suddenly, something burst out of the water. It was different shades of green with purple lines all across it and small spikes and two long whiskers coming from on top of its nose. I think I just figured out why they call it the Serpent's Pass. Sokka yelled in terror. The serpent roared at everyone and charged its head at them before Aang swung his staff at it, smacking it in the face with some air. Katara, you help me deal with it. Aang yelled as he jumped onto the water and used waterbending to propel himself around on the water, with Katara and Yu doing the same. Suki, you know all about giant sea monsters. Make it go away. Sokka yelled to Suki. Look, just because I live near the Inagi doesn't mean that I'm an expert, Suki yelled back, hitting Sokka on the shoulder. Sokka then picked up Momo and held him out to the serpent. Oh, great and powerful sea serpent, please accept this humble and tasty offering. Thank you, Sokka said, bowing his head slightly. Naruto then slapped him on the head at this, allowing Momo to get loose from Sokka's grip. Toph focused and stomped her feet and made a path across for them. Okay, move it people. She yelled at them. Everyone quickly ran, as Aang, Katara and Yu fought the serpent, using their waterbending to make a whirlpool, and eventually made the serpent's head slam into the path, causing it to sink into the water, unconscious. The three of them smiled at each other and ran off after the others. Later the next day. The group had finally made it across the Serpent's Pass after helping Ying after she suddenly went into labor, with Katara, Suki, Will and Yu helping, while the others stood outside an earth tent that Toph made. Well, that's not how I expected my morning to go, Will said, as they walked towards the well of Ba Sing Se. Yay. Not so excited to have kids, are you? Sokka asked Will with a chuckle. Not anytime soon, but someday. So wipe that smirk off your face, Naruto. Will yelled at Naruto, who was walking with Aang, but was close enough to hear them. Yay, you know I want kids too, Yu said. Naruto lowered his head at being caught so easily. What about you, Toph? Will asked with a smile at the earthbender. Never saw myself as the mom type, Toph said, as she placed her hands behind her head and thought about this. Well, at least none of us fainted, unlike you, Suki said with a teasing grin to Sokka, who pouted at this. Okay, well you guys plan how you're gonna have kids, me and Aang are gonna head to the city and get a head start on finding Appa, Naruto quickly said, as he readied his glider. Aang nodded at this, before he took off after Naruto. Howard. Will yelled after Naruto with a smile, along with Yu and Toph. Well, I better head back to the other Kaioshin warriors, Suki said with a grin at them. Sokka frowned at this, as he was getting used to having her around. Suki smiled at Sokka and hugged him, before she kissed him. Now, don't go looking at other girls in the city, okay? She asked with a teasing look at him. Never, Sokka said as he smiled and nodded. Suki gave him one last hug before she headed back to the Serpent's Pass. With Naruto and Aang flew onto the top of the wall, but before they could even look at the city, they both spotted what looked like a giant metal drill approaching the wall, while being escorted by Fire Nation tanks. Momo landed on Aang's shoulder and looked at the drill curiously. Sorry Momo, but finding Appa is gonna have to wait, Aang said, scratching Momo's head. As Naruto and Aang turned to go back for the others, Naruto shivered as he felt a chill go down his back. I sensed something bad near, Naruto thought, hoping it was just his nerves, as he and Aang flew off to the others. Inside the drill control room, Azula sat on a chair while Ty Lee and Mai stood nearby. Ty Lee was looking inside a periscope, just looking around, before she paused and smiled brightly. Ooh, that cute airbender is here. She said happily, as she spotted Naruto flying away. Mai paused at this and smiled lightly, as she remembered her encounter with Naruto back in Namashu, and how nice he was to her. Azula raised an eyebrow in interest at this. Well then, if he's here, then so is the Avatar, she said with a grin, as she tapped her fingers together. And the Redeed who hit on you, Ty Lee said as she giggled, while Mai rolled her eyes but smirked a little, as Azula blushed and growled in anger. That woman will not beat me again. Azula yelled out in frustration, at her remember at how Will could match her blow for blow. Princess. A man said as he entered with a report. What? Azula yelled out. One of our boats on the Serpent's Pass was destroyed by what was identified as a firebender using lightning, the man said nervously, as he showed Azula Will's wanted poster. Azula looked at the poster and growled at this new information. She can use lightning. She bellowed, enraged at this. Oh goody, now she has a rival she wants to beat, Mai said flatly. Ty Lee giggled at this, finding this funny. Will and the others were walking towards the walls of the city. Everyone but Toph looked up at the sky and saw Aang and Naruto flying over. Wow, that didn't take you long, Will said. Please tell me you found Appa right away, Sokka said, as he had a bad feeling. Guys, we have a problem, Naruto said with a serious look as he and Aang landed and folded their gliders away. Oh geez, it's not some fangirl from the city chasing you, is it? Will asked with a groan. Oh good, I could use a punching bag, Toph said with a smile, punching her fist into her palm. Toph, you said with a sigh at her friend's immaturity. What? You would so drown a fangirl if she threw herself at him, Toph said with a scoff. No, I wouldn't. I'd probably freeze them, you said with a shrug. Will laughed at this, while Toph smiled and nodded in approval. Ignore them. What's wrong? Katara asked Aang. A giant drill is heading for the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, Ong said with a frown. Sokka groaned at this, while everyone else looked surprised at this. Well, let's go see the guards on the wall and see how we can help, Will said, as she knew this was a big problem. Yup. So led the way, and I'll get us up there, Sparky Toph said to Will, before she smacked Will on the ass, making her jump in surprise. Oh, it is so on. Will said with a grin, before she tried to tackle Toph. But Naruto grabbed her by the back of her shirt. Save that shit for after we save the city, Naruto said simply, as they all walked towards the city's walls. But Zuko, Iroh and Kurama were all on the ferry as they sailed towards Ba Sing Se. How long until we get there? I'm so bored. Kurama groaned out as he laid on the deck. Well, you're the one who decided to come with us, Iroh said with a chuckle. Hey, sue me for wanting to hang out with you guys and give you backup, Kurama said with a groan as he looked up at Iroh. The fox's stomach then loudly growled. And I'm so hungry, Kurama said as he held his stomach. You're better off. This food is disgusting, Zuko said with a scowl as he looked at a bowl of stew he had been given, which he was sure had rotten meat in it. He stood up and walked to the edge of the ship and tossed it out to sea. Yay, it's disgusting, isn't it? A male voice said, getting their attention. Kurama, Zuko and Iroh looked and saw 3 people walking over. One was a male, with a piece of straw in his mouth and 2 swords hanging from his waist, the second was an archer with a straw hat, and the third was what looked like a male, who had a bandana around their head and 2 stripes of face paint on each cheek. The name's Jet. And these are my freedom fighters, Longshot and Smellerbee, the teen said with a smile as he gestured to the other 2. Hey, Smellerbee said as they both nodded at them. So, I hear that the captain of this ship is eating like a king while he throws us his scraps. That doesn't sound fair, does it? Jet asked Zuko as Zuko looked out at the sea. What kind of king is he eating like? Iroh asked as Kurama froze upon hearing that there was food. The fat happy kind. Anyway, I noticed your scar and you look like you can handle yourself, so Jet was saying, before getting interrupted. Food where? Kurama yelled as he jumped onto Zuko's head so Jet could see him before Zuko grabbed his mouth to keep him quiet. Whoa, is that a spirit? Smellerbee asked in surprise as Longshot looked at Kurama with interest. Sadly. Would you shut up, you idiot? Zuko said to Smellerbee before he turned to Kurama with a furious look. Must have food. Give me food, Kurama said deliriously. Well, if you have some skills, little fox-beard, you're welcome to help, Jet said with a chuckle at Kurama before he looked at Zuko. So, are you in? He asked curiously. Zuko paused at this and looked at his stomach and felt like he could definitely use a real meal, then he looked at the other refugees on the ship who looked miserable and hungry before he clenched his fists and looked at Jet. I'm in, he said firmly as he nodded at Jet. Jet smiled at this and nodded back, glad to see this guy had some morals. With Ong and Naruto. The gang were all being lifted up the wall of Ba Sing Se thanks to Ong and Toph's earthbending. While they made their way up the wall, they all looked at the approaching drill and the squad of tanks that were accompanying it. Now that's one big drill, Sokka said with a nervous gulp. Makes me wish Kurama was here to help, you said, as she knew with his restored abilities, he'd have been able to destroy the drill easily. How the heck are we gonna stop that thing? Katara asked nervously. We meet with whoever is in charge and come up with a plan, Naruto said as they approached the top of the wall. Do you think your stalker is in that drill? Will asked Naruto with a cheeky grin. Naruto shuddered at this as he really hoped not. They all walked onto the wall after they finally made it up to the top. Halt. State your business. A man in some Earth Kingdom uniform demanded as other soldiers aimed their weapons at them. Ong strolled forward at this. I'm the Avatar and we're here to help. Take us to your leader, he said with a determined look. The Earth Kingdom soldiers paused at this and nodded as some of the men led them to a space nearby where there was a general sitting at a table talking to his men while some led Ying and her family away. He then looked at the group and looked at one of his men who whispered to him. Ah, the Avatar and his group. I am General Sung and while your offer of help is appreciated, it is not needed, he said with a smile. This got silence from everyone, surprised with this. I'm sorry, what? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow of disbelief. Not needed, General Sung said again with a smile. What are you smoking? Cause I want some, Will said with a look of disbelief at how beepy this guy was being. Why is our help not needed? You asked with a beeped eyebrow. General Sung got up from his desk and led them all along the wall towards some binoculars. You see, my young Avatar, we have been attacked for years, ever since the war started, and this wall hasn't been broken in 100 years, General Sung said with a wide grin. What about the Dragon of the West? He got in, Toph asked with a raised eyebrow. General Sung faltered at this, but quickly composed himself. Yes, he did. But he was quickly dealt with, he said. And what makes you think you can deal with a giant drill? Naruto asked as he pointed at the slowly approaching drill. We have an elite team of earthbenders that will quickly deal with this drill. They aren't called the Terra Team for nothing, you know, General Sung said with a chuckle. Hey, that's a pretty catchy name. Maybe we need one, Sokka said with a grin, rubbing his chin in thought. No, will, Naruto, Katara and Toph said together. Well, Yu sighed and shook her head at this as Aang looked down at the drill and focused on watching the team of earthbenders. Naruto walked over as he took out a telescope and took a look down at the earthbenders and paused at what he saw. Oh, for crying out loud, he said as he groaned. What? Will asked as she walked over to join him. Nothing, Naruto said quickly as he started to put away his telescope. Oh sure, I believe that, Toph said with a flat tone as she crossed her arms over her chest. Give me that, Will said as she snatched the telescope and used it to look at the battleground. Is it really bad? Yu asked Naruto with a worried look. Will looked through the telescope for a second before she began chuckling. Hello. She yelled with a bright grin as she spotted Ty Lee and Mai easily defeating the earthbenders. Oh geez, your libido is going crazy. What is it? Toph asked with a chuckle. Will turned and looked at everyone with a shit-eating grin. His stalker's girlfriends are defeating the earthbenders easily, she said as she giggled. Wait, Ty Lee is down there? Yu asked, remembering the acrobat. Yup, and a gloomy one that Naruto hit on back in Amashu, Will said with a grin. Toph burst out laughing at this, while Naruto groaned. Wait, Mai followed me from Amashu? Naruto asked as he took the telescope as he had only seen Ty Lee. Yup. You must have made her day by being a sweetheart, Will said as she pinched Naruto's cheek. That, or she's looking to kill you, Sokka said with a chuckle. We're doomed. General Sung yelled as he looked through his own binoculars at the battlefield. You want our help now, Captain Dumbus? Toph asked with a condescending tone. Ah, that's mean, Katara said with a frown. Yeah, he's a general, Naruto said with a smirk. Toph, Will and Sokka burst out laughing at this. The general walked over to Aang and bowed lowly to him. Your help would be very much appreciated, he said. Aang nodded at this and turned to his friends. Okay team, we have a drill to deal with, he said as they all looked down at the drill. So, how are we gonna stop it, oh great leader? Toph asked sarcastically. We need to think of a plan to deal with this drill, Aang said as he thought to himself. Well, think quick before we have a full-on invasion in the city, Will said firmly as they all started to try and make a plan. With Zuko. Meanwhile with Zuko, he and Kurama were with Jet making their way up to the kitchen area of the ship while Smellerbee was setting up a distraction and Longshot would give them an escape route. I smell meat. Kurama whispered as he sniffed the air and drooled a little. At how good the food smelled. Hush you idiot or we'll be spotted, Zuko whispered to the fox as they all hid behind a corner and watched the guards guarding the kitchens. Jet then whistled like a bird and they then heard a commotion as the guards at the kitchen entrance ran over to check on what happened. Zuko, Jet and Kurama quickly made their way into the kitchen. It's a smorgasbord. Kurama said as he looked around the kitchen in excitement with tears in his eyes. Jet used his swords to cut down cooked meat off the ceiling, while Zuko used his dual broadswords to place bowls on top of each other before tying them so they didn't fall over. Hey, I smell fruit in these bags. Kurama said as he pulled on a bag and grew to the size of a wolf to drag it. Let's go, Jet said as he nodded at Kurama as they all left the kitchen and walked over to the railing. Jet gave another whistle before an arrow connected to a rope was hit just above their heads. They sent the bags first before they all slid down the rope with Kurama sitting on Zuko's head after he shrank down again. When they all got down off the rope, Longshot pulled the arrow loose and rolled it up just as the guards returned to their posts. A few moments later, they had passed out all the food to the other passengers and were now all sitting in a group together, eating together along with Iroh. Not bad, Lee, you and the spirit here have talent, Jet said with a smile at Kurama, who was tearing apart a whole cooked chicken. The name's Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, Kurama said after he swallowed his food and smiled at them. Wait, fox. So you know that knowledge, spirit? Smellerbee asked curiously. Ah. That owl was a punk ass, enslaving my fellow foxes before I attacked him. Kurama said with a laugh. Ah, a freedom fighter like us, huh? Jet asked with a chuckle at the fox spirit. So, what are these freedom fighters? Zuko asked, figuring he should at least ask and be more open, like Naruto and Will suggested. We're a group that tries to make things difficult for the Fire Nation and other guys that push others around, Jet explained with a hard look. Shouldn't you have a bigger group then? Iroh asked, not bothered by Jet's obvious bias against the Fire Nation. Thought we did. But I made some mistakes in the past that made them leave the group, Jet said with a frown. Lucky for him, me and Longshot stayed with him, Smellerbee said with a grin. I'm gonna guess after he promised not to be a Dumbus again. Kurama asked with a raised eyebrow as he got Uchiha vibes off Jet, but not as bad thankfully. Longshot just simply gave a nod at this before he ate his noodles. What happened, if I may ask? Zuko asked curiously. Jet sighed at this before he looked at them and decided it was best to explain. One explanation later. Jet had just explained what had happened when he had met Aang and the others. He's very lucky to have two young men with him, making sure that he stays on the right path, Iroh said, with a smile at their loyalty. Smellerbee stood up at this, with an angry look. I'm a girl, old man, she yelled out, before storming off. Kurama snickered at this, before Zuko slapped him on the back of the head. And a very pretty one too, Iroh yelled, with a look of embarrassment, as Longshot stood up and followed after her. Nice save, Kurama said flatly at this, before he turned to Jet. And you're a moron, he said simply, before drinking some water. Yay, I know, Jet said with a nod, as he looked down. Oh? And do you know why you're a moron? Kurama asked with a raised eyebrow. Jet was silent at this and thought to himself, wondering how he should answer. Too long, Kurama said, making a buzzer sound. Zuko sighed and shook his head at Kurama's attitude. Look kid, I'm gonna be blunt. You're kinda a bigoted moron, Kurama said firmly. Huh? Jet said cluelessly. You hate the Fire Nation with good reason, yes. But you taking it out on all of the Fire Nation is not the right way to do it, Kurama said. Yay, but Jet was saying, before getting cut off. Newsflash kid, there are assholes in every nation. I bet there were assholes in the Air Nomads too, Kurama said. Well, my furry friend is as blunt as a heart attack, there is wisdom in his words, Iroh said with a nod. So you're saying I should be open to being friends with anyone, no matter the nation, and focus on the Fire Lord and his people, not the civilians of his nation, Jet said slowly, getting what Kurama was saying. Wow. Look, he can learn, Kurama said with a grin. Even firebenders? Smellerbee asked curiously as she and Longshot walked back over and sat down. Oh sure, firebenders are like the other benders. It's a talent that can do good or bad. Hell, I know a firebender that is a crazy woman, but she's a friend. I'm glad that she has my back, Kurama said as he scratched his ear. I'll tell Will you said that when we meet back up, Zuko said with a chuckle. You do, and I'll give you another scar. Kurama said as he blew a small flame for emphasis. This made Smellerbee jump in surprise. You can breathe fire? Jet asked curiously as he was nervous but he had a feeling he should not react badly. Better than any dragon too, I'm proud to say, Kurama said with a proud tone as he puffed his chest out slightly. Iroh shook his head at this as they all laughed and continued to eat. Back with Naruto's group. Naruto and the others were in a medical tent on the wall that was set up for the defeated earthbenders. Katara and you were trying to help heal them while Momo poked a few. Their Kai has been completely blocked, Katara said as she healed an earthbender. It will take a while to recover, you said as she nodded in agreement. Oh, thank you so much, General Sung said in relief. Wow, she's actually good at fighting, Toph said as she couldn't imagine not having her bending. Yay, it's pretty scary. It's like her attacks are from inside your body, Katara said as she nodded. Oh. I have it. Sokka yelled as he smiled as he got an idea. You have what? Ants in your pants? Naruto asked with a smirk. Will and Toph both giggled at this. That's how we stop the Drell. We attack it from the inside. Sokka said with a grin, ignoring Naruto. That's actually a good idea, Will said as she nodded and smiled in approval. Okay, we have a plan, Aang said as he led them all down some stairs. Later. Everyone was behind a massive boulder near the wall. Okay Toph, now, Naruto said, looking slightly round the boulder. Toph nodded as she concentrated for a moment before she stomped and made a massive cloud of dust around them. They all went into the smokescreen and ran towards the Drell. Once they were close enough, Toph then bent a hole open in the ground. Quick, everyone into the hole. She yelled out. Everyone jumped in, with Toph going last and closed the hole up, leaving them in darkness. It's so dark in here, I can't see anything, Sokka said. Oh no, what a nightmare, Toph said with a flat tone. Sorry, Sokka said sheepishly. After a few moments, she made a tunnel up to the surface. This should lead us right underneath the Drell, she said as they walked out of the ground. Geez, all this effort just to get onto the city, Will said with a sigh as she looked at the Drell. There's a way in. Aang said as he used his airbending and jumped up to the opening and hung out from it. Toph used her bending to help Katara and Sokka up while Naruto helped Will and you up as Momo flew in. You coming with us, Toph? Aang asked the earthbender. No way. I can't bend inside that giant metal monster. I'll try and slow it down, Toph said as she walked away from the opening before bending a giant piece of earth right at it, causing it to slam into the Drell. Okay, stay safe, Naruto said to Toph before he went inside, with Aang following after him. Please, like I'm in danger doing this, Toph said with a scoff. Doesn't mean I can't worry about you, love, Naruto yelled out. Toph slightly smiled at this, as she had to admit Naruto doting on her felt nice. But she will be damned if she admits it. Inside the drill. After they had stolen some schematics from a worker in the drill, everyone was looking at them in the corridor, trying to find any weak points. It looks like the drill is held together with pillars around here, Katara said, as she pointed at the schematics. So, if we cut through the pillars, we should make it shut down, Sokka said with a smile. Not enough time to cut through them all, Will said, as she shook her head. We can cut halfway through them and weaken them. Then if one of us can strike it at the top, it will make the whole thing shut down, Naruto said, as he pointed out several points on the schematics, then at the top of the drill. The circus girl's attacks inspired you, huh? Will asked with a smirk. It's a good way to defeat an opponent, woman. Now let's go, Naruto said, as he led the way. With Azula. Azula was sitting in a chair in the B pit of the drill, while Mai and Ty Lee were sitting in their own chairs either side of her. Princess. A mechanic was attacked, and his schematics are gone. A guard's voice yelled through a communication pipe. Azula looked at Ty Lee and Mai at this. Let's go, lady, she said firmly, as she stood up and walked out of the room. Oh, I hope it's that whiskered cutie. Ty Lee said with a small smile, as she followed Azula. Whatever, Mai said with a bored look and tone, twirling a dagger as she walked behind them. Oh please, I know you like him too, Mai. I'll share him with you, if you want, Ty Lee said with a smile. Mai sputtered at this, as she blushed a little. What are you implying? She asked. I'm saying, the three of us should indulge in a group activity with that cute airbender, Ty Lee said, as she giggled, while skipping along. Azula, please tell her she's crazy, Mai said in exasperation. Well, hypothetically, if I take him as my husband, I would probably let him have concubines, Azula said with a slight smirk at Ty Lee. Mai groaned at this, while Ty Lee cheered and hugged Azula. You're both crazy, Mai said, as she put her head in her hands, while shaking her head. Yay, but you love us anyway, Ty Lee said, as she smiled. Mai went to say something, but stopped and sighed as she just continued walking, while Ty Lee cheered at this and hugged Mai. Let go of me, Mai said with a monotone. Nope, Ty Lee said simply, as she liked hugging Mai. Azula chuckled at this, before they continued walking. With Naruto. Everyone was in the big industrial area in groups, with Aang, Katara and Yu using waterbending to cut through the steel bars, getting them weaker, so they could give it the final blow. Naruto was looking over the area, looking for any steel girders they hadn't gotten to, when he suddenly shuddered. You okay, babe? Will asked curiously. Yay, I'm fine. But I have a bad feel, Naruto was saying, before being interrupted. Duck. Sokka yelled out, as he ducked as an azure flame missed him. Oh no, Naruto said, as he groaned as he spotted Azula, Ty Lee and Mai on the girder across from them. Oh goody, the cutie is here. Ty Lee said happily, as she clapped her hands. Hey Ty Lee, hey. Naruto said with a smile as he waved at the girl, before Yu grabbed his hand and pulled him into a run. No, come back, cutie. I want to go on a triple date with you, me, Azula and Mai. Ty Lee yelled out, as she jumped across to follow after them. Oh god, I love this girl. Will yelled with a laugh, as they all ran. Will you move, you floozy, Katara yelled, as she pushed Will along the hall. As they reached the end of the hall, they saw that the path split. Follow me, Aang. Naruto yelled, as he went right, which had a sign that said it led up. Aang, catch. Katara yelled out, as she unhooked her water pouch and threw it at Aang, who caught it. You'll need it more than me. Thanks. Aang yelled back, as he ran after Naruto, while strapping the pouch in place, as the others went the other way. You two follow the others, the Avatar and Airbender are mine. Azula yelled, before she ran after Aang and Naruto. The crazy one is on your tail, Naruto. Run, fish, run. Sokka yelled after Naruto, while Will's laughter was heard. Remind me to smack Sokka later, Naruto grumbled out, while Aang chuckled sheepishly. Not unless Katara does it first, Aang said, as they ran. Up on top of the drill. Naruto and Aang opened the door to the roof of the drill and saw that they were now on top of the drill, which was just about to drill into the wall. Perfect. Okay, let's go, Naruto said, as he and Aang ran towards the wall of the city to find a good spot. This looks like a good spot, Aang said, as he took out his water and started to cut into the drill. We need something to smash in the final OI. Naruto yelled, as a boulder fell at them from the top of the wall. General Sung, stop. You're not doing anything. Aang yelled up at the wall. General Sung looked down at the drill. No matter what, don't stop. He yelled at the earthbenders next to him, who bent more boulders and threw them down at the drill. Naruto and Aang dodged around the rocks so they wouldn't get hit. We need to finish this before we get crushed, Naruto said with a scowl. Aang nodded at this, before he saw a boulder slam next to the cut he had made into the drill, before he smiled and used earthbending to grab the boulder and move it over to the cut in the metal. Naruto watched as Aang made the boulder into a spike and put it into the cut in the drill. Naruto then spotted Azula making her way to them and blocked her way to Aang. "Not happening, princess," Naruto said firmly as he took a stance. "You're not getting in my way," Azula said firmly as she took her own stance. "Aang, do what you need to. I'll distract her," Naruto yelled, not looking at Aang. "Got it? Don't let her access any of your holes," Aang said with a chuckle. Naruto grumbled under his breath at this. "You're spending way too much time with Sokka and Will," he yelled over his shoulder. "I got that from Kurama," Aang yelled back. "I'll make sure to teach him some proper manners later," Naruto said quietly before he ran at Azula. Azula smirked at this as she fired a blast of fire at Naruto before she ran at him as he dodged and swung her foot at him, sending a wave of fire. Naruto made a shield of air and jumped back from Azula as the fire dispersed. "Damn, you're good," he said with a chuckle, as while he was finding this fight hard, he was actually having fun. "Thank you. It's too bad you're on the wrong side," Azula said as she charged at Naruto. "Maybe it's you who is on the wrong side," Naruto said as he ran towards Azula. "That's your opinion, Whiskers," Azula said as she fired at Naruto again, who dodged once more. "Don't call me that, only my girls can call me that," Naruto said as he sent a wave of air towards her, which she dodged by leaping over it. "Girls?" Azula asked as she paused and her eyes widened slightly at what he was insinuating. "Ha, got you," Naruto yelled as he slammed his palm into Azula's stomach, sending her flying backwards. Naruto then turned to Aang, who was falling towards the earth spike in the drill and slammed into it, sending mud everywhere. "Oh, Fu," Naruto was saying before he got covered in mud. "But the others?" Will, Katara, Sokka, you and Toph were outside of the drill, at the back end, standing on a rock pillar that Toph had made. "Looks like they did it," Will said with a grin as they saw bursts of mud fly out of the drill. "Please, like there was any doubt," Toph said with a smirk. "I hope they're both okay," Yu said as she looked at the top of the drill, seeing it absolutely covered in mud, along with part of the wall. "Good. Now, let's get out of here before the acrobatic version of Will finds us," Katara said as Toph lowered the pillar for them. "Please, there's nobody else like me," Will said with a grin. "We can only hope," Katara said with a sigh. "Oh, you got jokes, huh?" Will asked with a smirk at Katara as they walked towards the front of the drill. Before Katara could answer, Naruto and Aang dropped down in front of them, covered in mud. Momo flew down and landed on Aang's shoulder before he began licking the mud on his head. "Hey Whiskers, it looks like you and Twinkle Toes got results," Toph said before she slugged Naruto in the arm. "Yeah, and I almost got third-degree burns fighting Azula. But don't worry, I'm fine," Naruto said as you ran over to him to check on him, while Katara ran to check on Aang. "So what did you do to beat her?" Sokka asked curiously. "I beat her with skills, Ponytail," Naruto said simply. "Telling her you're dating 3 girls is skills?" Aang asked curiously, tilting his head to the side. This got a groan from Naruto, while Sokka burst out laughing, along with Toph. "Ah, you distracted her by bragging, huh? That's a dirty trick," Will said with a smirk. "Can we not do this right now? I feel like something Kurama killed and buried in a swamp," Naruto said as he shook his head, sending mud flying. "That's fine. After we get cleaned up, we can head into the city and search for Appa," Yu said with a smile. "Yay. And then we can discuss ideas to recruit Ozai's angels to our side," Will said with a grin. "Oh, for crying out loud," Naruto groaned at hearing Will's name for Azula and her team, trying to ignore her as they went to the wall, while Toph and Aang lifted them up with earthbending. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.